Welcome to the world of daily life stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy listening. The Skyward Dream. The airport shimmered in the early morning light, its vast expanse of polished tiles and glass casting reflections that danced like scattered stars. Camille Johnson walked briskly through the bustling terminal, her heart thumping with a mix of anticipation and determination. This was a day she had dreamed of for years, a chance to represent her company on an international stage. She had worked tirelessly, often staying late into the night, perfecting her presentation, and ensuring every detail was impeccable. Today, all of it was about to pay off. Camille's tailored navy suit fit her perfectly, its sharp lines exuding professionalism and sophistication. A vibrant silk scarf, a gift from her late grandmother, was tied elegantly at her neck, a token of her heritage and a reminder of the strength passed down through generations. Her leather carry-on, polished to a mirror-like sheen, hung lightly from her shoulder. Every inch of her screamed confidence and readiness, yet, deep within, she carried a quiet unease. As she approached the security checkpoint, Camille couldn't help but notice the curious glances and hushed whispers. It wasn't the first time she had felt the weight of being different in spaces dominated by others. She straightened her shoulders, meeting the stares with a calm, unflinching gaze. Years of navigating corporate boardrooms where she was often the only black woman had taught her how to command respect without uttering a word. She cleared security smoothly, her meticulous preparation paying off. As she reached her gate, a pang of pride surged through her, first class. It wasn't just a ticket, it was a symbol of how far she had come. A self-made woman, Camille had clawed her way up from humble beginnings, turning obstacles into stepping stones. When boarding began, she waited her turn, savoring the moment. Her name was called, and she stepped forward, handing her ticket to the agent with a warm smile. As she entered the aircraft, she was greeted by the plush interiors of the first-class cabin. The scent of fresh leather and the sight of spacious seats were a stark contrast to the cramped quarters of coach she had flown in during her college days. Camille found her seat by the window and settled in, placing her bag neatly in the overhead compartment. She pulled out her tablet, ready to review her presentation one last time. The sense of accomplishment was intoxicating, yet she remained focused. There was still work to be done. Just as she was about to dive into her slides, a voice broke through her thoughts. "Excuse me, ma'am," a flight attendant said, her tone clipped and devoid of warmth. Camille looked up to find a tall, impeccably dressed woman with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes?" Camille replied politely. "You might be in the wrong section." "This is first class," the attendant said, her eyes scanning Camille with barely concealed skepticism. Camille blinked, momentarily taken aback. "I'm aware. My ticket is for this seat," she said, maintaining her composure as she retrieved her boarding pass. The attendant's lips pursed into a thin line as she glanced at the ticket. "Very well," she said, her tone cold. Without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving Camille to process what had just happened. It wasn't the first time she had encountered subtle dismissiveness, but in this moment, it stung more than usual. This was supposed to be her moment, a celebration of her hard work and success. Instead, she was reminded of the biases that still lingered, even in spaces she had earned the right to occupy. Camille shook her head, refusing to let the incident ruin her mood. She returned to her presentation, her fingers gliding across the tablet as she rehearsed her key points. The hum of the plane's engines provided a soothing backdrop, and soon, she was lost in her work. But the flight attendant wasn't finished. Throughout the boarding process, Camille noticed the woman's attitude toward her was markedly different from how she treated other passengers. Her requests for water were met with exaggerated sighs, while other passengers were served promptly and with smiles. When Camille asked for a blanket, the attendant pretended not to hear her and walked away. The final straw came when the attendant loudly and unnecessarily corrected Camille for reclining her seat, despite others doing the same without issue. The subtle humiliation was undeniable, and Camille could feel the eyes of the other passengers on her, some filled with pity, others with discomfort. Camille's heart burned with anger and humiliation, but she refused to let it show. Instead, she sat upright, her hands gripping the armrests as she took slow, measured breaths. She reminded herself of her purpose. This flight was a means to an end. She would not let the actions of one person derail her. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Camille glanced out the window, focusing on the horizon. She thought of her grandmother, who had faced far greater challenges with grace and dignity. Camille resolved to do the same. But little did she know, the universe had its own plans. Camille leaned back in her seat, staring out the window as the plane taxied toward the runway. The horizon glowed with hues of orange and pink, the morning sun painting the sky with promise. Despite the stinging encounters, she focused on her purpose. This presentation wasn't just a stepping stone in her career, it was the culmination of years of effort and persistence. She wasn't going to let a single person diminish her joy or sense of accomplishment. The plane lifted off, climbing steadily above the clouds. Camille closed her eyes and allowed herself a moment of peace. She visualized her presentation, the opening slide, her key points, the confident delivery she'd rehearsed countless times. Her lips curled into a small smile. This was her time. The quiet was interrupted when the flight attendant returned, her presence as icy as before. She briskly placed a tray of refreshments on Camille's fold-out table, the movement lacking any care or politeness. A small container of fruit wobbled dangerously close to the edge of the tray, threatening to spill. Camille opened her mouth to thank her but stopped when the attendant turned and walked away without a word. She glanced around the cabin. Other passengers were being served with smiles and light conversation. A pang of frustration welled up in her chest, but she pushed it aside, determined not to let it ruin her mood. She reached for the fruit, adjusting it to avoid a mess, and then set her tray aside to focus on her tablet. However, the interruptions didn't stop. Every time Camille requested something, a refill of water, a napkin, the attendant either ignored her or took an inordinate amount of time to respond. Her requests were met with curt nods or eye rolls, while her neighbors received impeccable service. The disparity was glaring, and Camille felt the judgmental stares of other passengers, though none spoke up. By the time the meal service began, Camille's patience was wearing thin. The attendant approached with a tray, her demeanor no less hostile. She placed the plate in front of Camille with a little too much force, causing the silverware to clatter loudly. "Excuse me," Camille said, her voice calm but firm. "Is there an issue?" The attendant's smile was razor-thin. "Not at all, ma'am," she said, her tone dripping with insincerity. "Is everything to your liking?" Camille held her gaze, searching for some sign of humanity, but found only cold indifference. "I'd appreciate it if we could move forward with mutual respect," Camille said, her words measured. "I've noticed a difference in how you're treating me compared to other passengers." The attendant's smile faltered for a brief moment before she straightened her posture. "I assure you, ma'am, I'm treating all passengers equally." Camille exhaled, deciding it wasn't worth pursuing further. She nodded and returned her focus to her meal, though her appetite had waned. The tension lingered, but she reminded herself that she had overcome far greater obstacles. She wasn't about to let this ruin her journey. As the hours passed, Camille immersed herself in her work, tuning out the lingering discomfort. The hum of the engines became a soothing rhythm, and she found herself once again engrossed in her presentation. She rehearsed the key points under her breath, visualizing the room filled with influential executives and potential clients. She could see herself commanding the space, her voice steady and compelling. Just as she was finding her groove, an unexpected commotion at the front of the cabin broke her concentration. The murmurs of passengers grew louder, and Camille glanced up to see a man in a crisp suit entering the first-class cabin. His presence was commanding, and he moved with an air of authority. Whispers rippled through the seats as passengers craned their necks to get a better look. Camille recognized him instantly from news articles and corporate profiles: James Radcliffe, the CEO of the airline. Her brows furrowed in confusion. What was he doing here? She watched as he made his way down the aisle, stopping occasionally to greet passengers with a warm smile. His demeanor was the antithesis of the flight attendants, friendly, approachable, and genuine. When he reached Camille's row, he paused. "Good morning," he said, his voice resonating with confidence and charm. "Ms. Johnson, isn't it?" Camille blinked in surprise. "Yes, that's correct," she said, offering her hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Radcliffe." "The pleasure is mine," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "I've heard about your work with Carter Innovations. Impressive stuff." Camille felt a flush of pride but kept her response measured. "Thank you. It's an honor to represent the company." Radcliffe's gaze shifted, and his expression darkened as he glanced at the flight attendant, who was standing stiffly a few steps away. "Is everything to your satisfaction, Ms. Johnson?" he asked, his tone pointed. Camille hesitated, unsure of how much to disclose. She didn't want to appear as though she was complaining, but she also felt a responsibility to address the issue. "I've experienced some challenges," she said diplomatically. "But I'm managing." Radcliffe's eyes narrowed, and he turned his attention to the flight attendant. "Challenges?" he repeated, his voice taking on a sharper edge. "Would you care to explain?" The attendant's face paled. "There must be some misunderstanding," she said quickly. "I provided the same level of service to all passengers." Radcliffe's jaw tightened. "That's not what I've observed," he said. "Ms. Johnson is our guest, and I expect her to be treated with the respect and courtesy she deserves." The flight attendant stammered, attempting to defend herself, but Radcliffe held up a hand to silence her. "We'll discuss this further after the flight," he said, his tone brooking no argument. He turned back to Camille, his expression softening. "My sincerest apologies for any discomfort you've experienced. Please know that this is not reflective of our values as a company." Camille nodded, appreciating the gesture. "Thank you, Mr. Radcliffe. That means a lot." Radcliffe smiled warmly. "Enjoy the rest of your flight, Ms. Johnson. And best of luck with your presentation, I'm sure you'll be brilliant." As he moved on to greet other passengers, Camille felt a wave of vindication. The flight attendant, now visibly shaken, avoided her gaze for the remainder of the flight. Camille focused on her work, her confidence bolstered by the unexpected intervention. The plane landed smoothly, and as the passengers began to disembark, Camille noticed Radcliffe waiting at the front of the cabin. When she reached him, he extended his hand once more. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Ms. Johnson," he said. "I'll be in touch with Carter Innovations. I believe there may be opportunities for us to collaborate." Camille's eyes widened in surprise and gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Radcliffe. I look forward to it." As she stepped off the plane, Camille felt a renewed sense of purpose. The events of the flight had been challenging, but they had also reaffirmed her resilience. She walked through the terminal with her head held high, ready to take on whatever came next. What Camille didn't yet realize was that the encounter on the plane would spark a chain of events that would reshape her future in ways she couldn't have imagined. Her story was far from over, it was just beginning. As Camille stepped into the bright, bustling terminal of her destination, she felt the weight of the recent flight begin to lift. The expansive space was alive with energy, business people hurrying to catch flights, families reuniting with loved ones, and travelers wheeling their suitcases with purpose. She absorbed it all, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Her heels clicked on the polished floor as she navigated toward baggage claim, her mind already shifting to the task ahead. The presentation loomed large, but so did the opportunity. Camille was determined to make her mark. She reached the carousel and watched the luggage spin by, her thoughts swirling just as fast. The encounter with the flight attendant had been a bitter reminder of the biases she often faced, but the intervention of James Radcliffe had left her with a renewed sense of agency. In the past, she might have brushed it off, staying silent to avoid conflict. But this time, something had shifted. She realized she wasn't just representing herself, she was paving the way for others who, like her, had to fight for their place at the table. Her bag appeared, and she grabbed it swiftly, her movements precise and deliberate. As she exited the terminal, a driver holding a sign with her name stepped forward. The sleek black sedan behind him exuded luxury, a detail arranged by her company to ensure she arrived in style. Camille nodded in acknowledgement as he took her bag and opened the car door. She slid into the plush leather seat, her mind already rehearsing her presentation points as the city unfolded around her. The drive to the hotel was uneventful, but Camille couldn't help but notice the towering skyscrapers, each one a testament to ambition and achievement. This city was a hub of international commerce, and in less than 24 hours, she would stand in one of its most prestigious conference rooms, pitching her ideas to some of the most influential leaders in the industry. It was a moment she had prepared for all her life. When she arrived at the hotel, she was greeted with warm professionalism. The lobby was grand, with polished marble floors, towering pillars, and a chandelier that sparkled like a constellation. Camille checked in smoothly and was escorted to her suite, a corner room with sweeping views of the city skyline. She set her bag down and took a moment to absorb her surroundings. The room was a blend of modern elegance and comfort, the kind of space that made her feel like she belonged in the upper echelons of success. After a quick shower, to shake off the fatigue of travel, Camille settled at the desk near the window. Her tablet and notes were spread out before her, and she began fine-tuning her presentation. Every slide, every word had to be perfect. She rehearsed aloud, pacing the room, her voice strong and steady. This was her zone, where doubts disappeared, and her confidence took center stage. Hours passed, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, Camille allowed herself a brief break. She stood by the window, sipping a glass of water as she gazed at the city lights. They twinkled like a million tiny promises, each one a reminder of the opportunities that awaited her. Her thoughts drifted to James Radcliffe. His unexpected intervention had been a turning point. It wasn't just that he had stood up for her, it was the way he had done it, with authority and respect. It was a reminder that allies existed in places she least expected, and that standing her ground was always worth it. The next morning dawned crisp and clear. Camille dressed with care, choosing a sleek black dress that exuded power and professionalism. Her hair was pulled back into a neat chignon, and her makeup was minimal but flawless. The silk scarf, her grandmother's gift, once again graced her neck, a subtle nod to her roots and her strength. As she arrived at the conference center, the scale of the event hit her. The building was a hive of activity, with attendees from around the world networking, exchanging ideas, and preparing for the day's sessions. Camille was ushered into the green room, where she would wait her turn to present. The air buzzed with anticipation, and she could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. When her name was called, Camille stepped onto the stage with poise. The room was vast, filled with executives, investors, and innovators, all eyes on her. She took a deep breath and began. Her voice was steady, her delivery compelling. She spoke with passion, weaving together data, stories, and vision into a tapestry of inspiration. As she clicked through her slides, she could see heads nodding in agreement, pens scribbling notes, and faces lighting up with interest. By the time she finished, the room erupted into applause. Camille stood tall, a smile breaking across her face as she took in the reaction. This was her moment, a validation of her hard work, her perseverance, and her ability to command a room. She answered questions with confidence, her responses crisp and insightful. By the end of the session, she had not only impressed the audience, but also secured follow-up meetings with several key players. As the day progressed, Camille found herself swept into a whirlwind of conversations and connections. Attendees approached her with praise, exchanging business cards and discussing potential collaborations. Her presentation had struck a chord, and the momentum was palpable. For the first time in a long time, Camille felt not just seen, but celebrated. Later that evening, as she attended a networking dinner, she spotted James Radcliffe across the room. He was deep in conversation with a group of executives, but caught her eye and raised his glass in a subtle salute. Camille nodded in return, her gratitude unspoken but understood. The events of the previous day had been a catalyst, but she knew the success she was experiencing now was the result of her own determination and skill. The dinner stretched late into the night, and by the time Camille returned to her hotel, she was both exhilarated and exhausted. She kicked off her heels and sank into the plush armchair by the window, staring out at the city lights once more. Her phone buzzed with messages, congratulations from colleagues, meeting requests from new contacts, and even a personal note from Radcliffe praising her presentation. Camille allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. As she drifted off to sleep, her thoughts were filled with the possibilities that lay ahead. The challenges of the journey had been real, but they had also forged her into the person she was today. And as she had learned time and again, every obstacle was an opportunity in disguise. The morning after the whirlwind of her presentation, Camille woke to the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the curtains of her hotel suite. For the first time in what felt like months, she allowed herself a few moments of stillness. The echoes of applause from the previous day replayed in her mind, and she felt a wave of pride wash over her. Yet, as the world outside began to stir, so did her thoughts of what lay ahead. Success was not a destination but a journey, and Camille was determined to keep moving forward. After a light breakfast delivered to her room, Camille dressed for the day in a chic emerald green blouse and tailored trousers, exuding both professionalism and approachability. Her calendar was packed with follow-up meetings from her presentation, each one an opportunity to solidify connections and push her ideas further. She grabbed her notebook and tablet, both neatly tucked into her leather portfolio, and made her way downstairs to the conference center. The atmosphere in the building was just as charged as the previous day. Attendees mingled in the lobby, exchanging business cards and engaging in animated discussions. Camille's presence didn't go unnoticed. Several people approached her with warm smiles and congratulations. Each interaction reinforced the impact of her presentation, and she made sure to respond with gratitude and enthusiasm, knowing that every connection could be a stepping stone. Her first meeting of the day was with a team of international investors who had been particularly captivated by her ideas. The group consisted of seasoned professionals from different corners of the globe, their sharp suits and confident demeanors a testament to their success. Camille greeted them with a firm handshake and a smile that radiated poise. As they delved into the details of her proposal, she navigated their questions and concerns with ease, her knowledge and preparation evident in every response. By the end of the meeting, they were discussing next steps, and Camille left the room feeling a surge of accomplishment. The rest of the day followed a similar rhythm, intense yet rewarding. Camille moved from one meeting to the next, each one presenting new challenges and opportunities. She adapted seamlessly to the dynamics of each conversation, her ability to connect with people on a personal level proving just as valuable as her expertise. By the time the conference sessions wrapped up in the late afternoon, Camille had not only expanded her network but also laid the groundwork for several promising partnerships. As she exited the conference center, the cool evening air was a welcome contrast to the bustling energy of the day. Camille decided to take a walk through the nearby park, a lush oasis in the heart of the city. The rhythmic crunch of gravel beneath her heels and the gentle rustling of leaves provided a moment of clarity. She reflected on how far she had come, not just in her career, but in her journey as a person. Her thoughts were interrupted by the buzzing of her phone. She glanced at the screen to see a call from an unfamiliar number. Curious, she answered, her professional demeanor kicking in instinctively. "Hello, this is Camille Johnson," she said. "Good evening, Ms. Johnson," a deep, familiar voice replied. "This is James Radcliffe. I hope I'm not interrupting your evening." Camille's heart skipped a beat. "Not at all, Mr. Radcliffe. It's a pleasure to hear from you. I wanted to personally congratulate you on your presentation yesterday," he said. "Your vision and execution were truly remarkable. I've spoken with some of my colleagues, and we're very interested in exploring ways to collaborate with you and Carter Innovations." Camille's grip on her phone tightened, her pulse quickening. "Thank you, Mr. Radcliffe. That means a great deal to me. I would be honored to discuss potential opportunities further." "Excellent," he said. "I've already instructed my team to reach out to yours to set up a meeting. In the meantime, I'd like to invite you to a private dinner tomorrow evening. It will be a small gathering of industry leaders, and I believe it would be an excellent opportunity for you to showcase your ideas further. Camille hesitated for only a moment before responding. I'd be delighted to attend. Thank you for the invitation. Wonderful, Radcliffe said. I'll have my assistant send you the details. I look forward to seeing you there. As the call ended, Camille stood still for a moment, letting the weight of the conversation sink in. The invitation wasn't just an acknowledgement of her success, it was an open door to a world of opportunities she had only dreamed of. She felt a mix of excitement and determination. This wasn't just about her career, it was about breaking barriers and proving that she belonged in spaces often reserved for others. The next day passed in a flurry of preparation. Camille spent the morning researching the other attendees who would be at the dinner, familiarizing herself with their work and achievements. She wanted to enter the room with not just confidence, but also the knowledge to engage meaningfully. In the afternoon, she visited a local boutique recommended by the hotel concierge and selected a stunning cobalt blue dress that struck the perfect balance between elegance and professionalism. Paired with simple yet striking jewelry, it was an ensemble that commanded attention without being ostentatious. When the evening arrived, Camille felt ready. The dinner was held in a private room at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. As she stepped inside, the warm glow of chandeliers and the hum of conversation enveloped her. The room was filled with some of the most influential figures in the industry, their presence both inspiring and intimidating. Radcliffe greeted her warmly, introducing her to the other guests with genuine enthusiasm. Camille quickly realized that she wasn't just there to listen, she was there to be heard. Throughout the evening, she engaged in conversations about innovation, sustainability, and the future of the industry. Her insights and ideas were met with nods of approval and thoughtful questions, and she found herself connecting with people who could open doors she hadn't even known existed. As the dinner wound down, Radcliffe raised his glass in a toast. To visionaries like Camille Johnson, he said, his voice resonating through the room. May her courage and brilliance inspire us all to reach greater heights. The room erupted in applause, and Camille felt a lump rise in her throat. She had always dreamed of being recognized for her work, but this moment surpassed even her wildest expectations. It wasn't just about the accolades, it was about the journey that had brought her here. Every challenge, every setback, every moment of doubt had led to this. As she left the restaurant that night, Camille felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she knew one thing for sure, she was ready to walk it, one confident step at a time. The following morning, Camille awoke with the first rays of sunlight streaming through her hotel window. The city outside was already alive, the hum of activity reminding her that the world never stopped turning, and neither could she. Though the dinner had been a triumph and the connections she'd forged were groundbreaking, she understood that success wasn't a destination, it was a perpetual climb. She stretched, feeling the weight of both her achievements and the responsibilities they brought, and prepared for another day of navigating the ever-changing landscape of her ambitions. Her inbox was already brimming with messages, congratulatory notes, follow-up emails from potential collaborators, and a detailed itinerary from her assistant. Among them was an unexpected email from James Radcliffe's office. As she clicked it open, her eyes widened. Not only had he scheduled a formal meeting with Carter Innovations, but he had also invited her to join a high-level task force he was forming to address diversity and inclusion in the industry. Camille read the email twice, her heart swelling with a mix of pride and trepidation. This wasn't just about her career anymore, it was an opportunity to create change that could ripple far beyond her own life. After a quick breakfast, Camille dressed in a structured navy blue pantsuit, her mind already focused on the day ahead. Her itinerary included meetings with several executives she had met at the dinner, as well as a lunch with a prominent venture capitalist who had expressed interest in funding some of her ideas. Though her schedule was demanding, Camille thrived in the intensity, her sharp mind and natural charisma drawing people in with every interaction. The morning passed in a blur of handshakes and negotiations, each conversation adding another layer of depth to her network. Camille was no longer just a participant in the conference, she was becoming a key player. Her ability to balance confidence with humility set her apart, and the respect she commanded in every room was palpable. By lunchtime, Camille found herself sitting across from the venture capitalist, a silver-haired woman named Eleanor Shaw. Eleanor was known for her keen instincts and no-nonsense approach, and Camille could tell from the way she leaned forward, her piercing gaze fixed, that she was being evaluated on every level. "I've seen hundreds of pitches," Eleanor began, her voice steady and authoritative. "Very few leave a lasting impression. Yours did." Camille smiled, keeping her excitement in check. "I'm glad to hear that. I believe deeply in the work we're doing and the impact it can have." Eleanor nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Your vision is compelling, but vision alone isn't enough. It takes grit, resilience, and a willingness to adapt. Do you have that?" Camille met Eleanor's gaze without hesitation. "I've faced challenges at every step of my journey," she said. "Being underestimated, being the only one like me in the room, fighting for a seat at the table, I've endured it all. And each challenge has made me stronger. I'm not just here to succeed, I'm here to redefine what success looks like." Eleanor's lips curved into a small smile. "Good answer," she said. "Let's talk specifics." The lunch turned into a deep dive into Camille's proposals, her goals, and her plans for execution. By the time the meal ended, Eleanor had offered not just funding but also mentorship, a partnership that could propel Camille's career to new heights. As they shook hands, Camille felt a surge of gratitude and determination. This was more than a business deal, it was a validation of her journey and a promise of what was to come. The afternoon brought more meetings and an impromptu panel discussion where Camille was asked to share her thoughts on innovation and leadership. Though she hadn't prepared for it, she spoke with the same clarity and conviction that had become her hallmark. Her words resonated with the audience, and by the time the panel ended, several attendees approached her, eager to connect. As the day wound down, Camille returned to her hotel room to find another email from Radcliffe. This time, it was an invitation to join him for a private meeting the following morning. The message was brief but clear: he wanted to discuss her role in shaping the future of the industry. Camille read it twice, her mind racing with possibilities. What could he mean? Was this about the task force, or was there something more? That night, as she prepared for bed, Camille reflected on the rapid pace of the past few days. She had entered this conference with a singular focus on her presentation, but it had become so much more. The doors that had opened, the people she had met, and the opportunities now within her reach were a testament to her hard work and resilience. But they were also a reminder of the responsibilities that came with success. Camille knew that she couldn't simply climb the ladder, she had to ensure it was sturdy enough for others to follow. The next morning, Camille arrived at Radcliffe's office, feeling a mix of anticipation and resolve. The building was a masterpiece of modern architecture, its sleek design a reflection of the company's forward-thinking ethos. She was greeted warmly and escorted to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city. Radcliffe entered a moment later, his presence as commanding as ever. He shook her hand firmly, his smile genuine. "Camille, thank you for coming. I've been looking forward to this conversation." "So have I," Camille replied, taking a seat across from him. Radcliffe wasted no time getting to the point. "You've impressed a lot of people over the past few days, myself included," he said. "Your vision, your poise, your ability to inspire, those are qualities we need more of in this industry. I see a leader in you, someone who can not only excel, but also elevate others." Camille listened intently, her heart pounding. "I appreciate your confidence in me, Mr. Radcliffe. I've always believed in the power of collaboration and innovation to drive change." Radcliffe nodded. "That's why I want to offer you something more than a collaboration. I want to bring you on as a consultant for a new initiative we're launching, a global program aimed at fostering diversity, innovation, and sustainability in aviation and beyond. It's ambitious, but I believe you're the right person to help us shape it." Camille's breath caught. This was more than she had ever imagined. "I'm honored," she said, her voice steady, despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. This is exactly the kind of work I've always wanted to do, making a tangible impact. Radcliffe smiled. I thought you might say that. Let's discuss the details. The meeting lasted over an hour, during which Camille and Radcliffe laid the groundwork for her involvement in the initiative. By the time she left his office, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about her career anymore, it was about leaving a legacy. As Camille stepped out into the bustling city streets, she felt a profound sense of clarity. The journey that had brought her here, the challenges, the triumphs, the moments of doubt and determination, had all been leading to this. And while the road ahead would undoubtedly have its share of obstacles, Camille was ready to face them head-on. She wasn't just climbing the ladder, she was building bridges, blazing trails, and creating a path for others to follow. Her story was far from over, it was only the beginning.